All right, good morning, church family. My name is Tommy. I'm the youth pastor for Thrive Youth Ministries here at the St. Paul campus. And it's an awesome privilege to be able to share God's word with you guys today. Usually I'm downstairs, and a little bit of my job that I get to do that I love is that I get to spend every week walking alongside our students as they explore what it looks like to trust and follow Jesus. And on the occasion, I also get to throw water balloons at them, which is probably one of my favorite parts about my job. But it's a complete honor and blessing to be here with you guys today. For the last few weeks, Pastor Kong has been leading us in a series called Simple Rhythms. And he's been teaching us different spiritual exercises to help us grow in our faith in Jesus, but also to help us learn how to connect and be with him. Today, I want to continue this conversation of simple rhythms and share another spiritual exercise with us. I want to start off by reading from Luke chapter 10, verse 38 to 42. Join me and follow along with me as I read this for us. Verse 38. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care about my sister that has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, and indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it would not be taken away from her." So at face value, when we look at this passage, we see a very interesting dynamic between two siblings. We have Mary and her sister Martha. And in this situation, Martha looks at what her sister is doing, and she feels like, in her perspective, she is the responsible sister who's taking care of all the things that needs to be done, while her sister is slacking off and just sitting around doing nothing. Maybe you can kind of relate to that. You've experienced that in your life. So feeling overwhelmed, Martha goes to Jesus feeling justified and pleads her case to Jesus. She asks in all honesty for Jesus to go and tell Mary to help her out. I'll be honest, I've done that a couple times to my siblings. I've gone to my parents and told them that they weren't doing what they're supposed to. But I can only imagine the shock that Martha must have felt when Jesus turned around and corrected her. It's almost like going to Target for one thing and then coming back with toothpaste, right? Martha went expecting to get help, expecting to get a second hand with all the things that were meant to be done. But Jesus corrects her and realigns her perspective. In the midst of all the things that had to be done, Martha had missed what was truly important in that moment. It wasn't the different tasks, maybe the food that had to be cooked or the plates that had to be placed. It was simply sitting and being with the Master, receiving from Jesus. It's kind of funny, when I think about this passage, I can relate a lot to it, and maybe you can as well. A lot of times in our life, we live in a really busy, full world. Our phones are always buzzing. We always have a list of to-dos that never end, and our time is always being demanded from person to person, maybe to our kids, to our family members. And sometimes it feels like we're running an endless marathon that pushes us to our limit and leaves us restless and tired. Oftentimes, we're so consumed by the urgent matters that we neglect what is truly important: loving God and loving our neighbor. The exhaustion becomes a thief in our life, stealing our joy, our patience, and our ability to deeply connect with those around us. And it's a crisis of our heart, a spiritual drought in the midst of our busy life. Today, I want to give us and share with us a spiritual exercise that is meant to help us in our restlessness, in our tiredness, that's meant to restore us, to give us life, to keep us refreshed. The spiritual exercise that we were talking about today is the Sabbath. It's a rhythm that's meant to replenish us when we feel depleted in our souls. It's a practice that we're meant to do in community, and we're meant to be with Jesus. For some of us, Sabbath might be something that we've heard all our lives, seen people do it all the time. But for some of us, we may also be new to this concept of Sabbath. And maybe the first time you actually thought about it might have been when Pastor Greg went on his sabbatical 4 months ago. But regardless of what your perspective or your experiences with Sabbath, I think this is something that's really important for us to practice. And I want to share with you John Mark Comer's explanation of what Sabbath is for him. In his book, Practicing the Way, he says, Sabbath is a 24-hour time period in which we stop all working, set aside the day to rest, delight, and worship. When was the last time you set a day aside to stop what you're doing, all your work, to rest, truly delight, and really be in God's presence to worship Him? I mean, when I think about a whole 24 hours to not work, that makes me kind of anxious. That makes me look at all the things that are on my list and makes me feel kind of unsure. Can I really take a whole day to not do any work? Can I really trust that my life is going to continue going well without me checking my phone, checking my emails, checking with students, checking with my family? See, the word Sabbath finds its origin in the Hebrew word Sabbath, which means to stop, to cease from working. So when we observe and we keep the Sabbath, what we're really doing is we're stopping our work so that we can lean into the presence of Jesus to find restoration. Maybe for some of us, our Sabbath experience has been the church, Sunday church experience. But to be honest, sometimes with church, I feel like it kind of feels like a vacation where we need a vacation, right? You come to church, and at the end of the day, you feel even more exhausted. And what that speaks to me is that maybe we need to Sabbath better. Maybe we need to rest better than what we've done before. And what I want to suggest for each of us to implement in our lives and to take on is John Mark's Comer's model of Sabbath, which includes 4 different lenses that we ask ourselves when we take a break from our work. The first lens that we look at is stopping. The question that we ask ourselves is, when we take a Sabbath rest, are we ceasing, are we stopping from our normal work days? Maybe that means for some of us, we're closing our laptop. Maybe for some of us, that means we're turning off our phones. Maybe for some of us, that might mean that we don't drop off our kids at sports or clubs. Are you stopping your work? The second lens to help us do Sabbath well and to rest is the word itself, rest. And it's the question of, are the things that I'm doing in my Sabbath really restful? Does it fulfill, or does it refill my soul with new energy, emotionally, intellectually, physically, and spiritually? Or does it really drain me? Sometimes after a long, hard day, I have a tendency to sit on my couch and just watch TV, right? And that is my normal idea of rest, right? To get my mind off of what I was thinking. But real rest is so much deeper than just Netflix. It restores our souls. It prepares us, renews us for what's ahead of us. And it helps us get excited for what is coming in the week. The third lens to help us see Sabbath and to do Sabbath well is the idea of delight. In your Sabbath, does your activity bring deep, deep joy in God? And it's simply doing things that you delight. It could be things like dancing. It could be things like drinking coffee with a best friend, going out on a walk, maybe doing some self-care stuff like your nails, being in nature. I think a lot of times we think we rest by just sitting down, but do we actually enjoy God's creation that God has created for us? Do we delight in God's work? The last part of good rest, a good Sabbath, is worship. Is sitting at the feet of Jesus, being in his presence. Sometimes I feel like this is the thing that I struggle with the most. I'm making sure that I'm not working. I'm making sure I'm doing things that I enjoy. I'm making sure that I'm not doing too much. But then I forget to be with Jesus. In your Sabbath, are you doing activities that connect you deeply to God and his goodness and his beauty? I feel like lately when I talk to people, the phrases that I often hear is, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I don't have capacity. And the crazy thing is that when we're tired, we just can't give out of our emptiness. We can't love God the way he desires us to love him with all of our hearts. We can't give to people who are desiring deep community. When we're empty, we can't go and be selfless because we have nothing to give. So today, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling exhausted, if you feel like you can't give, I want to encourage you to try the Sabbath, to rest, to dedicate a time in your week to simply be present and do nothing. Real life, imagine what our community could look like if every time we gathered, our spirits were full and we were refreshed. Imagine the lives we could touch. Imagine the community that we could have with one another where we're investing into each other and not just receiving and asking for more. Imagine the amazing things God could do through us if we simply were rested and not tired. So I want to leave you with this. What do you need to do today to stop your work so you can rest? I want us to take a moment to ask God that, to bring to our attention, what is it in my life that I need to put to rest? Let's take 30 seconds and let God speak to us. Sabbath is an act of trust and faith in Jesus. When God created everything over 6 days, on the seventh day he rested, not because he was tired, but because he wanted to set a pattern for us. So let's rest. Let me pray for us.